Everybody's talking about the return of Kirk Cousins to Minnesota in US Bank Stadium. But how did the Vikings beat Kirk Cousins to improve to 11-2? One key factor is going to determine the entire game, and I'll tell you why. It's going to be a really big game on Sunday when Kirk Cousins returns for the first time to US Bank Stadium. He did have 2 games against his former team, the Washington Commanders. One in 2019 at US Bank Stadium on a Thursday night. One in 2022 at FedEx Field out in Washington, D.C. Now, having had that experience was going to be really, really important because it's going to help Kirk Cousins kind of control those emotions and really be able to focus on the game at hand. Because let's be honest, the game at hand is what's more important. He talked about it during his Wednesday press conference in Atlanta. I think you just kind of go through the week, go through your process. You understand it's like a familiar place, but at the same time, this happened when I played in Washington for the first time back. I had no idea where the away locker room was. I had never been in there. So in that sense, I'd been to the Washington Stadium many, 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 many times, but had never been to it in that way. Kind of felt like a rookie in that sense. And I think that's a really important thing that we don't necessarily think about. When we go to high school, we know exactly where the opposing team's locker room is. We know where they're going to be because it's our high school. We've been there. But when you come back, you may not remember. And even if you do remember, it's still kind of a foreign thing because you don't go in there. You never go into the opposing team's locker room. And those factors are a really big deal when you're having some of these conversations, when you're having some of these mental things that you're thinking about going into a game. And not only are you having to think about the mental stuff, he talked about the fact that his neighbor, John Weber, helped him out a lot because they were in the same cul-de-sac. And those things will flood into your memory. But you also have to play a football game, so you have to be able to balance those emotions. You have to be able to balance everything on top of each other. And let's be real, Kirk Cousins was a massive enigma in Minnesota. There were fans that loved him. There were fans that didn't like him at all. And a lot of it had to do with his performance based on the money that he made on that contract. And a lot of people were really excited to see him go. A lot of people were very frustrated that he went. It was a tireless conversation for 6 seasons. Now that we have Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy on the team, that conversation's really waned away, but it's going to bring up a lot of memories on Sunday, including being in the noon time slot, a time slot that Kirk Cousins knows all too well. But let's also be honest with ourselves. This is not the same Kirk Cousins that we had in Minnesota. His mobility has shrunk significantly over the course of the last few weeks, and it's all stemming due to his Achilles tendon tear that he made Packers last October. He's 37 years old now. He's just a different player. But one of the things that has always been able to get to him, you pressure him without blitzing, you can beat him. And that's exactly what the Vikings have to do today. Facing pressure is the hardest thing for Kirk Cousins, but it's especially valid when it's not a blitz. So let's just talk about some of the pressure numbers, and then we'll kind of relate it to the blitz. So on 32.6% of his dropbacks per Pro Football Focus, 139 of them to be exact, he has not fared well against pressure. 51.3 PFF passing grade, which you can take with a grain of salt. A lot of people do because it's their algorithm, their math. You may not 100% agree with it, but it's a valid data point when we're talking about the big picture. 56.1% completion percentage, 828 yards, 5 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. But these are more important. 5 big-time throws, 12 turnover-worthy plays. And he has a lot of turnover-worthy plays so far this year. His turnover-worthy plays total 21. So more than half of them have come in just a 32.6% sample size. That is how you get to him. But when blitzed, Kirk Cousins is significantly better. He has been blitzed 28.6% of all dropbacks, 122 of them to be exact. But he's got a PFF passing grade of 70.8, 64.3% completion percentage, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 3 big-time throws, 3 turnover-worthy plays. Blitzing him makes things easier on the back end for the receivers. If you can pick up the blitz, now that's going to be the key thing. Can Brian Flores design some blitzes to be able to get to Kirk Cousins without the offense being able to pick them up? If they can do that, if they can pick them up, you can take advantage of this Vikings defense because let's just be honest, the secondary just is not great. It's got solid players. It's got solid scheme. It's got really good coaching, but there just isn't the high-end talent in those position groups right now. So you can take advantage of him. But the Vikings have been able to win with 4. Jonathan Grenard just won Defensive Player of the Month for the NFC in the month of November with 4 sacks. He and Andrew Van Ginkel have been dominating. They each have over 9 sacks on the season. And Jonathan Grenard is one of the top pressure getters, number 1 per PFF. I believe he's number 10 per Next Gen Stats. They chart pressures differently. And I think that's a really key distinction when we're having this conversation. Let's put it this way. The Vikings want to win simple. Get pressure with 4. Make Kirk beat coverage. It's always been a struggle for him. Make Kirk beat coverage. You get enough pressure on him, it's game over. He can't scramble. At least not like he used to when he was in Minnesota. Will the fans boo or cheer him? I don't know. But they're going to cheer every single time Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel get a sack. I'm Tyler Forness with A to Z Sports. Skol Vikings.